Welcome everybody to this segment of SmallBizAid from the B to SMB Institute. I am very pleased to welcome Mr. Barry Moltz. Barry, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Great, terrific. Barry, of course, is an influencer in the small business community with a very large audience and a very, very large library of content that he has produced over the years, multiple books, a terrific podcast that he does, radio show that he does, talking to literally tens of thousands of small businesses, I think, every month. But you know, I don't want to steal your thunder. I actually want to hear the story from you, because I think this will be a great story. Give us a little history of your background and how you kind of got into this space.
Well, whenever I get in front of people, Dave, I always say the same thing. I've had 3 businesses over the last 20 years. The first business went out of business. The second business, I was kicked out by my partners. And the third business, I was fortunate enough to sell that business, pay back the bank the $1.3 million I owed them, and I got my wife back just about the same time. So I tell them the same thing. And the reason I've been writing books now and speaking is because after we sold the last business, Dave, my wife forbid me from starting any more businesses if we want to stay together.
And was the growth of your own businesses, was that what really got you so interested and passionate about fellow small businesses?
You know, it was, although I would say back in the early 90s, I was working for IBM and I read a book called Growing a Business. I got fascinated by being able to create your own business culture and really help people through a small business, because I was never one of those guys. Unfortunately, my parents were very disappointed in me. I wasn't going to become a doctor. So how was I going to help other people? It was really through business. And I decided that the best way to do that was really having my own small business, not working for a large corporation, although I did that too.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I think you're probably one of the writers about the small business community that has probably some of the longest longevity. I mean, you've been doing this for an incredibly long time, and I'm sure it's you know, you've accumulated I know you've accumulated a bank of knowledge, huge bank of knowledge. But I really like to start kind of these interviews I've been doing over the course of the last 6 months with kind of the where were you when question, because obviously this last 6 months and the, you know, many years you've been doing this has been absolutely extraordinary. Do you kind of remember where you were and how you kind of woke up and said, "Woo, this is not good. What's going on?"
You know, I totally remember. I had just come back early part of March from seeing a client in LA. And I remember being on the airplane and the person next to me coughed. And you would have thought that they yelled out bomb or something like that, because it was that startling. And people were like, you know, complaining. And the following week, I was supposed to go to Scottsdale for a series of meetings and also for a little vacation. And the week before, those meetings gradually started to cancel. And my speaking gigs for April gradually started to cancel. And then on March 13th, living in Chicago issued their lockdown. And I'm like, oh, I guess this is serious now, because I had, you know, I'm a big apocalyptic reader. I love reading that stuff at night before I go to bed for whatever reason. And I've seen all the movies, but I really never thought it would happen in real life.
Yeah, it's so true. And you know, as you're kind of realizing this is going on, I'm sure you had some conversation with small businesses. What were some of those early conversations like? What were they saying? What were they talking about?
I think a lot of people thought it was an overreaction, right? Why do we really have to do this? We've been faced with H1N1, some of these other things in the past. There's no reason really to do it. And even if we're going to do it, it's going to be a couple weeks. We'll have a well-deserved vacation, and then we'll be back. You know, personally for me, Dave, I kind of got excited about it because I've been a prepper since Y2K.
No kidding.
So now I was able to get my masks out, get my gloves out, my hand sanitizer, all my food, and my wife thought for the first time, "You're not so crazy." So I was excited to use those things.
Oh my gosh. You know, it's really not funny, but it is funny just kind of in the context of all those years of doing it, and probably people saying, "You're crazy, man," and saying, "No, not so much."
And I'm the guy that had the N95 mask that I had bought for like 49 cents.
Yeah, I mean, we're both here in Chicago, so we were kind of recipients of that very early lockdown. You know, it seemed like Governor Pritzker here in Illinois was in lockstep with Governor Cuomo in New York, and
Right.
there was just a kind of a very heavy-handed, we're going to do this kind of reaction. But you're obviously talking to small businesses around the country that it was much more of a slow roll.
Right.
What were, given your audience is spread out all over the place, have you seen kind of a pattern take shape of kind of the understanding, acceptance, the disagreement, all the rest, kind of is this crisis has kind of evolved in different pockets around the country?
Yeah, I think that most small business owners, first of all, didn't really get it till it happened to their community. But so many small businesses are national. I mean, I remember the latter part of, or actually the first week in June, we traveled down to Phoenix. And at that point, there had really been no pandemic there. People were not wearing masks. What's the big deal? That's a northern thing. That's a New York thing. That's a Washington thing. That's a Chicago thing. But then as the pandemic rolled through their cities, I think people really, really got it at that point. And now it's been pretty much in every part of the country.
Right, right. So you've written over your career, you've written a lot about business reinvention and about just how businesses fundamentally in their growth pretty naturally arrive at the need to reimagine how they're going to market or reimagine how they do business or what they offer. Can you talk a little bit about how businesses in the early stages of this crisis were kind of waking up to the fact of, it was called a lot of different things. It was called pivoting, it was called reinvention, retrenching, retranching, all sorts of different phrases. But how are they thinking about their means of survival through the lockdowns?
I think in the beginning, people, Dave, were not reimagining. My next book is called Change Masters, and it's about how people have a difficult time with change because your brain is evolved not to want change because it's uncomfortable. So at that point, we were saying, how long is this going to last? Okay, if it's going to last for a month, maybe I got to cut some expenses, right? Do I have to, do I need to look at changing my business model, right? Will the government help me since they're shutting down my business? So I think early on, people were really resistant to change, but the longer it went on, people are going, wow, this looks like it's gonna be around for a while. Maybe we got to burn the boats. Maybe we got to figure out this is not going to change in the next year and a half or so. Let's do something about our business model. And I think that's what's been dawning on people these last 3 or 4 months.
So now you've created a series that we've referred a lot of our membership to, that were interviews with small business who have kind of gone the journey of reimagining their business. Can you describe that series and how you arrived at the questions that you asked and the kinds of small businesses and their stories that are in this series?
Yeah, I wanted to really have something that people could rally around because it's really easy for a small business owner to get into despair. And I wanted them to show them other small business owners that have reimagined their business by looking at the assets and the skills they have and what they create now, and they could do it too. So I had one client which didn't make it into the series where he was one of the biggest office products dealers on Amazon. And when people were no longer going to the office and product sales were going down, he realized one of his major skills was he knew how to buy Amazon advertising for a small business and make money on it. So he started teaching that to other small businesses. So he took one of his skills and he pivoted. Someone who is in the series is a gentleman named Tony Drockett. He's the chief creative officer at Hammett. They're a high style handbag brand. They closed down their one retail store in LA and they reopened it up as really a virtual showcase, a virtual showroom for a customer that would call in and give them a tour of the store and help them pick out the pocketbooks they wanted. So they had to totally reinvent the way they had to do business. And I really think that this is what Americans are known for, right? We are resilient. We are figuring it out.
Right. So were there some, as you interviewed more and more of these small businesses, were there some kind of the keys to kind of how they did it? I mean, to your point, I am certain that 100% of small businesses were in despair, probably for most of the month of March, unless you happen to be in one of those very fortunate categories like cleaning services. That
Right?
was, you know, the phone
Or
was
selling bicycles, right?
right, right, right,
Cozy's in Chicago. I'm a big
right.
cyclist. Has 3,000 bicycles on back order, and they're all sold.
Yeah, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. But I mean, did you start to see some steps that were very common in the way in which small businesses were thinking about what they had to do to really survive?
I think that some people were just stuck. They couldn't get out of their mind. They couldn't reimagine themselves. You know, the people that perhaps owned a bowling center or ran events or were tour guides, they were just stuck. And then other people actually said, okay, what assets do I have? What skills do I have? How am I going to really reinvent myself? And they were able really to move on with the help of their employees. And so I think more and more people now say, if I'm going to survive, I really got to let go of that old model and bring on the new. And the good news is, Dave, if they bring on a new model, when things go back to whatever time is normal, a year from now or 2 years from now, I believe they'll also have that business as well. I mean, think how far telemedicine has come. It's been around for 10 years, but only in the last 6 months has Medicare said, yeah, we're going to reimburse for telemedicine. Now everybody's doing it. Who would have
Right.
thought you would take yoga classes or my karate classes online before this? That seems silly, but now it's a matter of course. I mean, look at what, you know, Peloton and their stock has done. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, and there's no question. And it seems like the small businesses that could start from a point of recognizing their core equities. I remember in business school there was a whole course devoted to core equities, and it was the things that you could describe to anyone that you were famous for. So, you know, kind of like your office supply seller for Amazon. Hey, I could be famous for my ability to buy advertising on Amazon. So it's, basically, if you can answer that question successfully, a small business could really figure out the place they need to go.
I mean, we saw companies in Chicago like Sitter City who had become famous providing babysitting services. Well, that wasn't really going on, so they morphed to providing tutoring services, nannies, senior care services, and they were successful because just in the last month, they sold their business to Bright Horizons. So they were successful pivoting, and I think some of these other services are going to stay.
So our audience is professionals from business to small business enterprise, B to SMB enterprises. You know, I don't think this is the right way of framing the question, as in like how do they get in on the action, but how should our peers in the business to small business space be thinking about the pivots that small business are going through and the reimagination that they're going through? Do they sit and wait to see what comes out on the other side? Is there some level of engagement and support that they can offer? What do you think?
I think there's two things. One is they should reach out and ask them how they're doing, how their business has changed, and how they can help, and really listen. Because remember, if the large corporations are able to do this now and help the small business owners, they're not going to forget when things get better. They'll always remember that this company helped them out, and they'll forever be loyal. So I think, Dave, the first part starts with listening. And a lot of large corporations have done amazing things helping small business owners. I mean, the community really has come together.
So I think more than most, you have a finger on a pulse. Let's do a little bit of a lightning round here. On a scale of 1 to 10, of the small businesses that you talk to, and specifically the ones that are part of this series, on a scale of 10, where 10 is needed a lot and 0 is don't need it at all. Let me just rattle off some things that I've kind of at least anecdotally heard that small businesses really need. Support in their digital migration.
I would say probably an 8.
An 8.
Yeah. I think there's
How about
more to do.
right? How about this is a little bit more abstract, but help in creating a better digital customer experience for whatever their online presence is?
Oh, I think that's probably a 9 or a 10 because customer experience has totally changed, especially those people that actually had a contact business. So most folks need a lot of help. A lot of small business owners didn't even have online stores, right?
Right. How about the small businesses engagement with their own consumers, their own customers? How much help do they need with that?
I think they need a lot of help here, probably an 8 again, because many of them that were small business owners that were either having a hard time or maybe closed for a period, they actually drew back and didn't communicate with their customers at all. And I think that's a big mistake. During difficult times, you actually have to communicate more. I remember all the travel companies that I'm in communication with, they kept sending me messages saying, when you're ready to travel, we're here. And here's a video that you might enjoy of a place in Africa. And so I appreciate them staying in touch with me and keeping me top of mind. While I may not doing business with them now, I'll certainly remember them when I want to do business with them next year.
What about support for, let's just broadly describe it as back shop operations, making the donuts? How much help do small businesses need in that?
Again, probably an 8 in this area because many of them are inefficient. They don't have good process. These are things that have just been created haphazardly. And now with everybody remotely, it's really all got to be in the cloud and they all got to talk to each other. So there's a lot of improvements that can be made here. That's one of the silver linings, Dave. If we can really work on these parts of our business while we're going through this, we'll be much better off when we come to the other side.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously what's taking shape is that as all of these things from your perspective are a very high priority. My God, that's a pretty broad spectrum of opportunity. Let's do just a couple more. Financial services and not necessarily in the form of financial support, as in cash infusions or loans or grants or whatever, but really the managing of small business finances, scale of 1 to 10.
I would say either a 9 or a 10 because most of us, I know when I was in my small business and I had an MBA from Northwestern University, I was horrible at managing my cash. And every business goes out of business because they don't have cash. Cash slows down during difficult economic times. People need help in managing it. How can they make their cash go further and keep track of it? So definitely a 9 or a 10.
And then the last one is their people, their labor force. How much help do you think small businesses need in figuring out the new dynamic of having employees?
Yeah, I think again that one's a 9 or a 10. We've always had employees work part-time remotely. No one's ever had all their employees work remotely all the time. And we're not used to managing people over a Zoom call or through telephone or email. So we have to somehow rebuild our culture. And we're trying to do it at a time, Dave, when people are incredibly stressed. They're now basically living at work because there's no boundaries. So a lot of help is really needed in this area.
This is I don't mean it to be a snarky question, but do you think they'll trust us to provide that help? Do you think they'll trust large B to SMB enterprises who certainly have the resources and the products and the service and the delivery mechanisms to provide that help? Will they trust us?
I definitely think they will, because remember, when people are in pain, that's when they'll change. Small business owners are in a lot of pain now. They need all the help they can get. So they really will. Now, I actually think now is a time when a lot of change is going to happen because there's a lot of disruption out there. I know for myself, I've been loyal customers of one business for a very long time. And now I've switched over to another just because the initiatives that they've taken. I used to fly in an airline who now isn't keeping the middle seat open. Now I moved over to an airline that is. So my 40 years of loyalty went out the window to fly another place where I don't get points anymore. Loyalty is up for grabs. So it's a great time for larger corporations to engage small business customers.
So if you could channel the voices of, again, all of these small businesses that you were talking to and deliver in one voice to B to SMB brands, here are the top 3 steps you need to take, the top 3 things you need to do to be successful coming out of this.
First, ask the small business, as I said before, what they need, be flexible. The second thing is really be focused on your revenue for the long stream. If you can help out a small business now, they will be loyal for the future. Don't try to optimize whatever they're gonna pay you over the next 2 or 3 months. And then really finally react to what's going in the market, because as we know, this situation, Dave, is incredibly fluid and it's constantly changing. So what a small business owner needs now may not be what they need a month from now.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know if you saw today, Alignable released right in the middle of Small Business Week as well, kind of their latest forecast of based on a survey of over 50,000 small businesses, their forecast of the state of small business really through the end of the year. And they asked a two-part question that ultimately, when you combine the two, was quite revealing. It was, how much revenue do you expect to make as a small business through the end of the year? And how much expense do you expect to have between now and the end of the year? And unfortunately, the gap was upside down, and suggests strongly when the gap was greater than 50%, the expenses were greater than 50% than the prospective revenue, absent some of infusion of cash, and absent of having a savings account, they're done. They're going to probably have to close, and that's 42% of small businesses potentially. So, is there? Do you think that the things that helped small business survive to this point are still going to be effective and applicable as small businesses go through what potentially is a next phase, a wave two, or just a longer period of kind of being in this incredibly stressful situation that they're in?
Well, I really think that large corporations really have helped fill some of that gap as what small businesses need, because I don't believe the government has done enough. If you look at other Western nations, we're way far behind what they provided to their small business owners. We need a second round of PPP. And while I don't think it was rolled out efficiently in the beginning, it did work out okay. And it really was a lifesaver for these small businesses. We need more aid, and we need another round. The biggest thing that I think the problem is with a lot of small business owners can't pay their rent. I saw a statistic that said that 90% of commercial rents are not being paid in full. And I don't even mean that small business owners need rent, but landlords need relief. The landlords also need some kind of relief.
Right.
It's not fair to stick it on them or stick it on the banks. So this is a ticking time bomb that's not going to go away. There needs to be more support. And I really think there should be a second round of PPP to go along with it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And in fact, I just wrote a column today about the needs that are really taking shape across the board for small businesses, and wondering who is the voice speaking on behalf of small business, because 4.5 million of them, or whatever the number is, they're 4.5 million little voices. How do they become one big voice and really make an impact where I think they need to make that impact to get the kind of assistance that they need, the priority that they need?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, it's always been an issue because you have all these, 27 million small business owners, and it's always been a very diffuse voice. And everyone always says, we want to help the small business owner. They're the backbone of Main Street, but not that much actually comes through. And I think some of these tax credits are okay, but I think they're confusing, and they don't give money to the small business owner now like the PPP did. Because again, it was a lifesaver, and I think we should replicate that at least one more time.
Well, listen, thank you for being a champion for the small business, and really think that it's incredibly, I've now listened to 7 out of the 10 radio shows that you did with these small businesses talking about reimagining. They're not a long sit, they're 15 minutes. I've done 2 of them on a walk. I did 2 of them, over a cup of coffee in the morning. And they're enormously instructive, I think, because they really do lay out how these small businesses' minds are working around just taking their business and repositioning it, reinventing it so that it can be successful in current times. And I'm with you. I think that a lot of them are doing this. It's going to pay dividends well into the future based on what they've done, no matter where it goes, really.
I think what's made them successful when they originally started the business, that creativity, they're doing that creativity again to see where now it can go. So again, I think American business will come through. I mean, think about it. In 1917, when the Spanish flu was over in 1920, we had the Roaring 20s. So I say prosperity is just around the corner.
Right. And would you agree with the idea that even though there may be a large number of small businesses that fail, the entrepreneurs that started and ran those businesses don't evaporate? They don't just go away. They can come back and launch a new business, start a new business, be kind of just as successful, but starting again.
Yeah, I mean, I always say I'm an entrepreneuraholic and still my wife stopped me, but listen, we can't help ourselves, right? We got to go out and we see a problem and we want to help people solve it. And that's what we do.
Terrific. Well, we've provided a link to the YouTube series that you've done, and I think you have multiple books, a couple of which I have on Amazon. So I encourage everybody to check those out as well. They're terrific reads. You're an excellent writer. I appreciate the time you gave us today, because I think that it really does form at least a foundation for a lot of our peers in the B2SMB community to think about how they're going to really help small business. And that's the point of this conference, to SmallBizAid. So thanks very much
for everything you do, because I really think that you are helping out small business owners connect with larger corporation, and this idea of coming together as a community, Dave, you're certainly a big part of that.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye-bye.